Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. We are headed right down to the University of Virginia. We've got Jennifer Lawless. She's the chair of the political science department down there. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello.
There is no shortage of things going on at the national level. Let's start in New York City. Let's spring forward to Monday. Donald Trump is supposed to go under charges. Walk us through this legal battle. Will we actually go to the courts on Monday? What's your assessment?
So this is the Stormy Daniels hush money case. And over the course of the last couple of weeks and the last few days in particular, the Trump team has done everything they possibly can to delay the case, and they keep coming up against a brick wall. The judge is not hearing it. So they have about 5 or 6 hours left to make additional arguments, but this is the closest he's gotten to having to go inside a courtroom for one of these cases. And this would be the first time that the delay tactics seem not to be working. This is a pretty straightforward case. It's the hush money case we've been hearing about since 2016. What is a little bit different about it is that all of his arguments about presidential immunity really don't apply, because all of this behavior happened before he was elected president of the United States, or 95% of it happened before he was elected. So that's part of the reason why the judge is saying that it's not necessary for us to find out whether the Supreme Court says that presidential immunity is absolute or to rule on any of these other delays, because this case is different. So my bet is that we will, in fact, see the case begin on Monday.
And if you were found guilty, what is the potential punishment, likely punishment? And if he's exonerated, how does that play out? Walk us through those two scenarios.
So the punishment, it's really unclear, because it's unclear exactly of what he would be found guilty. There are, there are obviously a variety of different penalties that could apply. In terms of exoneration, that would be the best thing that could happen for Donald Trump, for a couple of reasons. The first is that he could say that for the last 6 years, the prosecutors have been doing everything they possibly can to take him down on this front, and it was frivolous, and there was no reason for everybody to undergo this, and it was expensive, and it was, it tapped the legal system. And this is just one case, and it's like all of the other ones, and there's nothing there either. So this is one of these examples that he could then be able to tout to suggest that all of the other cases are frivolous as well. The other reason that an exoneration would potentially be important for him is because he would be able to suggest that he was a winner in the courtroom, and he's been having a hard time lately suggesting that he's a winner because he's been losing. You could argue that a $175 million bail reduction was a success or a victory, but he was still found guilty and he still had to put up bond. So, this is one of these situations where I think he thinks he's got a shot, and it's unclear what's going to happen. The witnesses have been unreliable in the past. You don't want to rely on somebody who has been convicted of lying. Stormy Daniels is in a very, very awkward position. She's been receiving death threats. She wants this whole thing to go away as well. Donald Trump denies that any of it happened. This is not it's not as straightforward as, for example, the Mar-a-Lago documents case.
Okay, and so what is the likely timeline of how long this trial will take? And then it's before a jury, so we're going to find out in a relatively short period of time thereafter, one way or the other.
Well, jury selection is part of the problem. One of the reasons that Donald Trump wanted to delay this was he argued that it was impossible for him to get an impartial jury while he's running for president. The judge said, you've been president. It's going to be very difficult for you to get an impartial jury regardless of the situation. And now is no worse than 3 or 4 or 6 or 12 months from now. So that process will probably be a little bit more drawn out than usual. I would assume a few weeks, but nothing about any of these cases is straightforward or operates the way that we expect. And there's no question that every single time that Donald Trump's team can try to obfuscate or delay or seek a dismissal or challenge or appeal any ruling, they will. So, the timeline when it comes to Donald Trump is a little bit more uncertain than in a typical hush money case.
Let's go to Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., the Biden administration gets bad news on inflation. The stock market did not appreciate it, dropped nearly 500 points. Real concerns whether there will be any cuts to the interest rates over at the Federal Reserve. The June meeting is now much in question. And then later in the summer, generally, the Federal Reserve doesn't like to be seen as putting its thumb on the scales relative to a presidential election. So then you wouldn't potentially even have any rate cuts till afterwards in November and December. What's your thoughts on how this is playing out and how it impacts the presidential race?
Well, there's no question that the Biden administration must be pulling their hair out because every other economic number is trending in such a favorable direction for them. And inflation is so much lower than it had been. Yet it's too high for the Fed to make that last cut that would potentially help heading into the election. That said, this is not a normal election cycle. And for many, many decades, the theory was generally that it's the economy stupid. And when Americans feel like the economy is going well, they reward the incumbent. And when I think it's not going well, they punish the incumbent. It seems that if there's ever been an election cycle where that's not going to be the case, it's 2024. And this is an election cycle where cultural issues, in particular immigration and abortion, are at the forefront of voters' minds. So it's not good economic news for the administration, but I'm not sure that they win or lose that many votes based on the economy this time around anyway. So if you're going to have this happen, 2024 might be the best time for it to happen.
Let's travel from Washington, D.C. out to the state of Arizona. The Arizona Supreme Court reinstalls, I'm not sure the technical term, reverts back to a law passed in Arizona before it was a state in 1864, banning abortion of all kinds, no ands, ifs, or buts. That is obviously set Arizona aflame on the issue of abortion. What's the importance of that, and how do you expect that to play out?
That was the best news that ever could have happened to Joe Biden because it makes Arizona probably a pretty secure blue state for 2024. The law allows for abortion only in the case of the life of the mother. So there's no rape or incest or health of the mother or health of the fetus exception. And it jails abortion providers for 2 to 5 years. And so basically what it's done is it takes abortion off the table. The reason that this is helpful for the Biden administration is twofold. The first is that kind of law completely contravenes public opinion, even the public opinion of most Republicans. It's far too draconian, it's far too restrictive, and it also punishes people who are providing a service to women who up until now have had the legal right to have that service provided. It's also a law that has been on the books from not only before Arizona became a state, but before women received the right to vote. And so any argument about the Republican Party moving in the wrong direction, just put a stamp on this one, there's your ad. The other reason that it's pretty helpful for the Democrats and Biden in particular is because 24 hours before this decision came down, Donald Trump made his statement that he thought was going to appeal to moderate voters and some independents, that he would not sign a federal abortion ban. Instead, the decision should be left to the states. Well, within 24 hours, this state demonstrates what happens when they have decision-making capacity. And he said that this will be fixed shortly. It's not. The Republicans in the Arizona State House support the law and are not willing to overturn it. And so Donald Trump did this by overturning Roe versus Wade. And that will be the message that the Biden campaign keeps touting over and over and over again. Donald Trump did this will be their main line.
Let's go from one sunshiny state to another, Florida, where the law of the land is now 6-week ban, correct?
Yes. I'm getting jet lag from all of the traveling.
We are zooming across the country like a Concorde.
No one even knows what that is anymore.
No one.
Look, the Florida ban seemed pretty bad at 6 weeks until the Arizona law happened. But I honestly believe that this potentially could put Florida in play in a way that it hasn't been in the last couple of elections. With Joe Biden at the top of the ticket and Florida voters believing that the 6-week ban is far too restrictive, there's no reason to expect that voter turnout on this issue won't be unusually high. And if Democrats and independents turn out to vote in the presidential election on abortion, there's a chance not only that Biden, wins Florida, but that the Senate race becomes more competitive than usual. And so, I think Ron DeSantis got a little cocky thinking, oh, a lot of Democrats are willing to vote for him. He outperformed most other Republican candidates in 2022. He doesn't have that amount of panache anymore. He was unable to parlay that into a nomination. And abortion is front and center on the ballot this time. So, I think that Florida is potentially in play.
If Caitlin Collins was age appropriate to be a candidate for president, coupled with UConn coach Dan Hurley, could they beat as a team Trump and Biden going away?
I think that there's something to be said for athletes in politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are we right now? We're, 7-8 months away from the presidential election. We know that the conventions are just TV commercials. They'll have the worst viewership in the history of conventions. The networks will probably cut way back on even their coverage of it. Is this just going to be this tit for tat, nonstop, every week, who wins the week kind of situation? Or will we ever start to see any momentum for either of the candidates that defines this race?
There are a few things that could inject momentum into the race. If they don't happen, then yeah, I think this is basically what the campaign looks like until November. But a few of the things are, first, the Trump trials. We don't know if the hush money case will be the only case prior to Election Day. We also don't know the verdict. It looks like people believe that if Trump is convicted, their support for him is a little bit more mushy. Obviously not among his base, but among everybody else. That could fundamentally change the dynamics of the race. Another state or a series of states, reenacting legislation that is completely anti-choice is something else that could continue to affect the dynamics of the race. And then the third thing is the inability of the Republicans to get their house together in the House of Representatives. Mike Johnson is apparently going to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, and they're going to have a joint address on election integrity. That's not helpful for the Republicans. And so, if that's how Mike Johnson plans to continue to fill out the rest of the year, coupled with threats from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to oust him, it's hard to see how the Republicans can make a case that they're the people who should be put in charge and that they should continue to be allowed to govern. So this could be a situation, for example, where Joe Biden manages to hold on to the White House, the Democrats take back the House of Representatives, and the Republicans wind up with the Senate. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's just stay in the House for 1 second. Mike Johnson is ever so teetering on being deposed. He would be the 73rd member of the Republican caucus to have served as Speaker of the House in the past
this year.
6 months. Yeah, this year. I can't quite keep up with the math. He is in leadership in name only right at the moment. They've passed nothing. They're unable to do anything, even things that he has philosophically and on the record spoke consistently in favor of, like funding the Ukraine. He has been unable to move legislation forward on that. Does it matter if he is deposed? And is it better for the Democrats to leave Mike Johnson right where he is?
Look, the Democrats have basically said that they'll save him as long as he throws them a couple of goodies like Ukraine funding. It's better for the Democrats because they know that there's no way that the Republicans are going to help him accomplish anything. And so at this point in the election cycle, if nothing gets done, that's a strong argument for the Democrats. That said, the Democrats don't even have to save him, because if they don't save him, who's next? Right? There were a handful of people who could not get the level of support that they needed. And so regardless of whether Mike Johnson stays as Speaker or not, I think it just demonstrates a crisis on the part of the Republican Party. The other thing that I would note is the upside to the Democrats saving him is that they look like they put governing ahead of everything else. Like, they didn't want a House of Representatives that was paralyzed and literally unable to move forward because the Republicans can't elect a leader. But it's not only on these substantive policy issues that Johnson is unable to garner support. There were 8 or 9 procedural votes that he couldn't even get through. Like, his his support, his conference is not even allowing for votes to happen on those substantive issues. And so it's hard to imagine anybody who's less effective than Johnson has been.
So I believe it was yesterday afternoon, President Biden, and I don't know if he's laid off all of his staff, but clearly everyone in his communication staff has been fired or sent to Bolivia or something like that. He hosts a joint press event in the Rose Garden with the Prime Minister of Japan. The Prime Minister is standing there wearing his suit, looking appropriate, wearing glasses. Joe Biden comes to the podium wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses. It might have been the most absurd presentation of a president. What's up with that? Like, does anyone, you know, can't they hire some former Reagan person that can just teach them that it really almost doesn't matter what you say, it's how it looks?
We had an orange president for 4 years. I'll take Ray-Ban sunglasses. Also,
no.
you might recall, I don't remember if you remember, but toward the end of his presidency, Barack Obama had the audacity to wear a taupe suit at the podium. All of the headlines read the audacity of taupe.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that was at the end of his term, not running for re-election.
I think we're all accustomed to seeing Joe Biden in. I think we're all accustomed to seeing Joe Biden in these sunglasses, and this is what he is, and this is who we have.
Not a good look. Needs to recharge that communications team a little bit. What should we be looking for over the next couple weeks? Is it all about New York and Stormy Daniels' former adult film superstar? I believe she was an adult film superstar, if I am coining the phrase correctly. Is that really what the future of America is dependent on?
Well, I think it's dependent on it in that, not because of the trial itself, but in how Donald Trump manages the trial and in the things that he says, in the extent to which it sort of promotes his coming undone. Remember, too, there are various gag orders in effect for different trials, and every time he's in front of a microphone, he potentially crosses over that line. So I think all of these different legal suits are, beginning. They have been, but like they're weighing on him, and he's going to have a podium and a microphone on a regular basis. So I think it's not only the substance of that trial, but the way he navigates it. And then I think that the relationship that Mike Johnson has decided he needs to strike with Donald Trump over, of all issues, election integrity, is where we should be looking.
Yeah, I cannot imagine Donald Trump going home every night to his wife and she asking, how did the trial go today? That cannot be a fun environment.
You think she's at home when he gets there?
And with that, Professor Lawless, as always, thank you for your insights. We look forward to tracking all of these events over the next week. For everybody else, stay tuned. Much more going on. As we've talked about earlier today, a big fire down on Allens Avenue, once again exposing the environmental issues and the environmental justice issues facing folks who live on that side of the city. This facility has gone by functionally unregulated for more than a decade. I didn't say the word unregulated. The director of Department of Environmental Management, Terry Gray, told us that in last summer this time. So stay tuned for much more on that and many other things, including updates on Washington Bridge. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.